You can't coach a business, you coach a human being. The business can't answer you back. With my psychology degree, I was already doing all of the things that I'm doing now. I just didn't have the confidence to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I bring to the table. Stick to your boundaries, like have those in place, even if they are challenged externally. Your mindset is about how you think, right? It's then about how you feel. It's about what you tell yourself. It's that inner narrative. I could create something for you in your business, getting to know you, that would definitely make you money. But if you don't implement it, that's normally because of stuff that's going on with your mindset. If you feel like it feels really vulnerable to ask for help, even though you know you need it, that's a great place to be in, because then you can change it. It's not just about everybody else. It's about what I need to. If I can help like one person from the things that I share to see that, oh, do you know what? That actually sounds like what I need. If I can help to make that perspective shift, then I've won, right? That is success to me.
Hey, welcome to the Leaders Podcast with me, Laura McDonald, the leadership coach and mentor. Come with me as I explore the elements of leadership that give leaders like you the power and confidence to make the impact you know you can. I'll be sharing my own experiences, top tips and insights, and talking to some very special guests to share their thoughts and leadership experiences on mindset, influence, change, and growth. So let's get right to it. In today's episode, I'm speaking to the wonderful Nicole Louise Winer, business strategist, coach, mentor, and the owner of Nicole Louise Online. Welcome to the Leaders Podcast, Nicole.
Hello, Laura. Thank you for having me.
No worries. Well, we've known each other for about 3.5 years, and knowing the work that you do, I had to get you on here because I think you have some really important insights for leaders everywhere. So I thought it was important to have you on. So I hope you enjoy it. But before we start, I have a question for you, because we all need to serve ourselves so that we can serve others better. But my guests all have different ways of doing this. So I thought the more we can get out there, the better.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you is, what have you done to serve yourself in the last 24 hours?
Oh gosh, that's a good question. In the last 24 hours, so I'd go for this morning as an example of that, actually. So I had a bit of a tough weekend with stuff to do with my nan and other bits and pieces that are going on. And I've got a really busy work week this week. I've got a really full client diary. And one of my go-to drivers is to work hard. And I still have to work quite hard on not feeling like I'm being lazy if I'm doing nothing, or, nothing doesn't exist, but like the whole, relaxing to be able to do that. But I knew that from being there and doing that before, when I'm feeling like a little bit stressed or a little bit overwhelmed or a little bit like there's a lot coming up, the thing I can do is go into hustle. So I'll just do more and more and more. But what I actually needed to do this morning was to not do that and have a really low dopamine morning, which is also really important for my ADHD to maintain my energy levels. So I caught up on an episode of EastEnders with the dog on the sofa whilst I was eating my porridge. Did a little bit of stretching, and had a bit of a lie-in, actually. So I didn't get out of bed till 9.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Gone are those days for me.
I realize that for any parents listening, they hate me right now, but that is leading myself, right? So that then I can show up in the best way that I can for this chat with you, for my clients for this week, for myself, for my health, for what else I need from myself this week as well. I know that I want to go for a walk today, even though it's pouring down with rain. If I didn't do that slower morning, I probably wouldn't have the energy to do that later. So yeah, that'd be my example from the last 24 hours.
This is exactly why I wanted you on here, because I know that you have put a lot of effort into understanding yourself, and you have made a lot of adjustments to the way that you run your life to make sure that it works for you. And that's exactly what you do for your clients, right?
It's not always easy, though. It does take work, and it's going to mean that you're faced with challenges, especially if you're making changes. And what I found, like internally for myself, like, or you're coming to the realization that you need to make those changes, it's then about like understanding that even if other people around you don't accept those, as long as you're not being like a total dick, then like stick to your boundaries, like have those in place, even if they are challenged externally. And the reason that's important is because when you're going through the process of deciding to make those changes, like you said, with awareness and everything else. And then you go out there and you like say to somebody else, well, actually, like, oh, a partner, whatever, I need some more space. I need some more time. I need some more space to myself. Like in the mornings, this is important for me. Well, it's probably never been that way for them, whether that's at work, whether that's at home, whatever that is. So other people need to then catch up. It doesn't mean though that when those challenges that you're faced with from other people and their habits of what they're used to doing with you and with you around, that you can't stick to what you need.
It is that own boundary setting. One big thing you introduced to me was that the four tendencies framework,
Mm-hmm.
and obviously understanding that I'm an obliger, and that the challenges that come with that, with being able to say this is what I need, and being able to voice that and stick with it, was a huge insight and allowed me to change quite a lot, I think, in my own life. um
I love that.
just through like being aware and being able to say, what, I need this. As I said, you're the owner of Nicole Louise Online, so share with everybody what it is that you do there.
So I'm a business strategist, mentor, and coach, as you quite kindly introduced me as already. I work mostly with online service business owners who are working in either as solo businesses or have got like a couple of members of their team, or maybe they hire freelancers to help them with stuff to essentially grow their businesses to hit their income targets and to do that whilst having work-life balance. There's a whole thing about, work-life balance being a bit of a myth. It is when you don't define it properly, coming back to what we're talking about right now. So yeah, essentially for a lot of my clients, it's about wanting to earn more consistent income whilst working less hours. But it's not this whole, 10K months thing by working 10 hours a week and not putting in any hard work. I'm very open that you do have to put in the hard work. And I share the practical strategies with you of the things that you should and shouldn't be focusing on. I know we don't like the word should, but sometimes there are things that we are doing that we don't really need to be doing. With the practical mentorship, and then also with the coaching, there's also the deeper stuff that are around habit change, lasting habits.
I know that you actually started another business when you first became self-employed. It wasn't this one, was it? You started another one first. What made you make that switch to supporting business leaders? Why did this matter to you?
I was already doing it actually. So this is the funny thing, the ironic thing, but also the beautiful thing about what I help people with now is a lot to do with confidence, imposter syndrome, feeling like you're a fraud, not really know what you're doing. I mean, I'll let you into a secret. We are winging it our whole lives. Every day we wake up and we just wing it. Like that's everybody is on that. Like you're not alone, like with that. But I felt like an imposter. I felt like I couldn't say that I was a coach. I felt like I couldn't say that I was a mentor. I felt like I couldn't say that I was a strategist because I'm very academically driven. So I didn't have qualifications in those things. And I was like, well, I can't possibly call myself that. But my first business was an outsourcing business. So I ran like a VA agency model where I was doing the doing for clients, but because I'd worked in corporates for HSBC for over 10 years, which I know all this makes me sound very old and I look like a baby, but the maths. Yeah, because I'd worked in corporate for so long and I'd worked alongside execs and leaders as their confidant, helping them to run the back end ops of the operation. But also with my psychology degree, I was already doing all of the things that I'm doing now. I just didn't have the confidence to say, this is who I am, this is what I'm doing, this is what I bring to the table. And when I started my first business, essentially, yes, I was doing a lot of the doing for clients. And then I had other people obviously helping me with that as well when I grew it to that agency type structure. Um, but I was giving a lot of strategic advice. I was giving a lot of personal support as well in terms of things that had happened in their lives that they were struggling with that were impacting their business. And then I looked at it and I was like, well, I do want to call myself a coach, but I'm nervous about that because I don't have a qualification in it. I do want to call myself a mentor, but people don't pay for mentorship because when I was in corporates, it was like the thing that you kind of volunteer around. So how can I make money from that? And then the strategy side, I know I'm a strategic thinker, but I was like, strategist, it feels big. It feels like consultancy. And I don't know. And then I just started looking at it really practically. So I made a list of all of the things I was great at. And one of the things that came up was when I was comparing between people that I admired in the industry and me. And I worked out that I'd done 6,500 hours just to get my psychology degree. And some people, and so I have a deep understanding of mindset, I have a deep understanding of human behavior and people and a passion for it. It's not just a qualification, it's a passion. And there's some people who don't have any qualifications or interest in it and just call themselves a coach anyway. And I was like, okay, Nicole, it's time to get out of your own fucking way. let's stop this. Yeah. So I kind of transitioned the business. I was already, as I said, I was already doing it with clients. It was a really natural transition for me to go into what I'm doing now. But yeah, my first business was started in January 2018. And then I was kind of blending the two, not really realizing or not charging enough for the advice I was giving. And then in November 2020, the first business I stopped completely and then started, went into this one full time, my version of full time anyway.
You've grown it quite a lot so that you support people in lots of different ways. I mean, the theme of today's conversation is self-leadership, and I'm purposely making this my first guest episode. Lots of people have said some variation of you cannot lead others until you've learned to lead yourself. My experience of that was extremely interesting because when you spend so much time leading teams in the corporate world, as I did, and as you've done and supported them, and even when you're the kind of person that knows that you need to keep learning, growing, developing as a person, you kind of naively come into the small business world thinking, I've already got this self-leadership thing. And it's, I don't think in all the time I've worked with you, I've personally seen a single one of your clients with businesses that are, say, 5 years old or younger, go through at least a small realization that they still have quite a lot to learn about self-leadership. Mm-hmm. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I work with, I don't just work with coaches, but I do work with a lot of coaches. So coaches who, people who are motivated by personal development. They're motivated by learning more about themselves. And a lot of them have come from corporate settings where they have had leadership responsibility and management responsibility. And then they've brought that into what they're doing now. And they're kind of like, yeah, well, I've got this. And then they find out all this other stuff. So not just around all the other bits that you need to be able to juggle to run a business, because there's like, in an organizational structure, there are teams that deal with finance, HR, people, tech, marketing, sales. Like when you do it, it's all you, especially at the beginning, like it's all you. And then not only that, but then what that does and what that mirror that holds up and what that light that shines on what's going on inside. That's when the voices start of going, oh my God, I'm not very good with social media, for example, or I can't do tech. I can't do social media. I don't want to do that. If you don't want to, I get it with strength. Sometimes we need to push ourselves a little bit to be able to do some things that are important. But everybody, no matter what it is, there's always different things. There's always different parts of that come up, and some of it will be related to the business. But and I always say this, like, you can't coach a business, you coach a human being. The business can't answer you back. Right? You can't have a conversation. You can't ask the business to think deeper on certain aspects or a question. Like that takes a human to do that. So you coach the human being. So yeah, even though it's business related, it always comes back to the person.
What you said about like, finance and HR and everything being on your shoulders, you suddenly realize at some point in your first few months that you hold 10 job titles before you actually hold the one that you designed. So yeah. You don't actually start off, being a coach or being a mentor or being a business strategist. You start off being CEO and then CFO and then CMO. And then, so you have like all these job titles and you have to deal with all of that before you can actually then do what it is that you set out to do. And that was a huge realization for me, because despite my quality experience that I'd got, thankfully, due to the job roles that I had, like I knew how to manage all of this stuff, but it had only been me managing it to an extent. There were still people behind the scenes doing it, and I had other people around me I could call on if I had too much on my plate and things like that. And it was really easy to push it onto other people if you needed to. But then, Yeah, when it's me, myself, and I sat at home in my office going, oh, crikey, I have to deal with all of this stuff before I can even think about coaching somebody else, you know, and the volume that you have to push yourself to learn as well. Like even now, I mean, I'm, 3.5 years down the line, and I'm still learning a huge amount about, how to run a business. And I'm sure you'd probably say the same after 6.5 years. It's, it's you keep learning, you keep growing, you keep pushing yourself to do more. And that takes a huge amount of self-leadership to do, because
Yes.
it is that self-motivated piece, isn't it? And that could be really hard to achieve sometimes. And like you said, when you've got all those voices kicking off in your head, you're kind of like, oh dear, I've got a lot to tackle. There's a lot to tackle there. You just kind of mentioned your psychology degree. And I know you're a bit of a psychology nut. You've been studying this for what, like 20 years now.
Yeah.
What part does mindset play in our ability to self-lead?
It's the most crucial part of all. Your mindset is about how you think, right? It's then about how you feel. It's about what you tell yourself. It's that inner narrative. It's how you communicate. It's how you form habits. It's your natural responses to stress, and all that kind of stuff. And again, like you've touched on a few times, that point about self-awareness is so key. And like people come to me all the time. They're like, I want to make more sales. I want to be better at my marketing. And the majority of the time, I think 99% of the time, yes, whilst the marketing could do with some improvements or some changes, and whilst yes, the sales methodology or the offers or whatever it is could do with some improvement, but it's the self-work that enables you to actually implement the stuff. I could give you the best strategy in the world, and I won't call it foolproof because that's not realistic, but I could create something for you and your business, getting to know you, that would definitely make you money and help you to work less. But if you don't implement it, that's normally because of stuff that's going on with your mindset. So you have to do the inner work, which is uncomfortable sometimes, most of the time, a lot of the time, if not all the time.
All the time. I was going to say it's definitely all the time.
And I, for me as well, I'd say like it used to be more uncomfortable than it is now. Like it still is uncomfortable sometimes. It's more comfortable for me to to not know the answer, or to be open to learn, or the more you do it, the more comfortable you get with it as well.
I put out a poll a while ago highlighting statements that I think leaders need to be able to say, as a kind of like lead by example situation for your team. So it included things like I don't know or I was wrong. But the winner of the poll, and I quite agree, is I need help. And
Mm.
that's the first thing that your clients are saying to you when they come to you. I need help. And we all know the impact that that has on our teams because, like, as I said, it is a lead by example thing. But why is this so important to us, the leader? We always talk about the impact leaders have on their teams, but what impact does that have on us?
It's so important. I mean, okay, a couple of examples. We go to like a business owner, so somebody who's working for themselves, freelancing, and also people who are newly appointed into leadership positions in a corporate environment. Okay, because of all the imposter stuff that comes up, and you already feel like you're kind of shit. How did I get here? How did I manage to get here? Like I'm doing it, but I don't know how it happened, or like I'm just, again, I'm winging this. When you're already feeling all of that stuff, that can be the hardest time to then say, I need help, because it's extra vulnerable. Your confidence inside is already feeling rocky, like shaky. So to be able to say, I need help with this, whether that's whatever that's for, this can leak into your life as well. And this is when the overwhelm comes. This is when the burnout comes, right? Because then you start taking everything on. So not only, and again, go back to that thing that you said around the 4 tendencies, which is by Gretchen Rubin, a framework that I love. It's brilliant. If you are an obliger and you respond mostly to external expectations, when you're coming to say, oh, but I need help with this, you're like, no, I'll just worry about everyone else. I'll worry about the team. I'll worry about my clients. I'll worry about everything else. I need to worry about my family and friends and everything, but you don't do that for yourself. So being able to say that you need help as a leader is also, it's setting an example for it to be reciprocal the other way.
Mm.
And especially if you're leading a team, you want them to be able to come to you when they don't know, or when they were wrong, or right, to say, look, I fucked this up. I really need some help. I really don't know what I'm doing with this. I need some help. And if you don't do that first, in terms of for yourself, inner work for yourself, how can you model that behavior? You could stand up and give a presentation and tell them what they're supposed to say, and then they observe you and they're like, well, they never do it.
Mm-hmm.
It's vital.
I've never had a problem asking for help when it comes to work tasks. You know what I mean? So if you take me back to hospitality, I'm in the kitchen, I'm presented with a ticket that has a dish that I don't know how to make, and I'm perfectly able to say, can someone show me how to make this thing? You know,
Yeah.
I have no problem doing that. But the more vulnerable the help is that's needed, the more difficult it becomes to ask. So when leaders say, and having been in this position myself and having known many colleagues in all the industries that I've worked in that have been in this position, when it comes to things like, I'm overwhelmed, I'm overworked, I'm too stressed, I need time off, I need to actually take my lunch break,
Yeah.
being able to ask for those things as an obliger, especially, I can't speak for other personality types, but I can definitely speak for this one, becomes almost a completely impossible task.
It becomes paralyzing.
Yeah.
It's the very opposite of exactly what you feel like you're capable to do.
And it's so damaging in the long run, because the longer that goes on, the worse it's going to get, you know. But being able to just say, even to just a business coach like yourself, as a small business owner, I need help. There's a lot of stuff here I don't know. There's a lot of stuff, not just about running a business, but about me as a business owner, business leader, that I need to learn and grow in. The fact that your
As a
clients are
human
able to say
being,
that. Yeah, as a human
as a human
being.
being, those labels are like largely, well, they are relevant, but they're not, because you could take that to parenthood. You could take that to being a partner. You could take that to with your health, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's okay not to know. And the thing as well is like, it's this self-awareness piece that's key. So if you feel like it feels really vulnerable to ask for help, even though you know you need it, that's a great place to be in, because then you can change it. It's fully within your
Absolutely.
control to change.
And it's only by knowing that you can change it. You know, you've said to me loads of times over the years, you've said, like, you don't know what you don't know. And it's often just that moment of, oh, thank goodness that's why it's happening. You know, or that's why something's standing in my way, or that's why I don't feel able to do that. That you can then work around it,
Yeah.
you know, or work over it or through it, or whatever you need to do with
Yeah.
it. You know. Yeah, I mean, you've already touched on this a little bit, but you support a lot of people, but you make it really clear from the beginning that they have to put the work in, they have to take the action, they have to be accountable, and you're there to support all of that, not do it for them. Like, why does that matter so much at the beginning of a relationship with someone like you?
Well, number one, I'm here to be honest, right? So I could probably make a lot more money and I wouldn't sleep at night if I wasn't being honest with people. But I'm not going to do the work for you. I can help you to figure out how to do it better, more efficiently, how to outsource it, what you'd want to look like for that, in asking for help again, like that. You know, I can help you with idea generation. You know, you can, if you pay me, you can pick my brains. Like, that's how it works, right? But I'm not going to do it for you. And a lot of people, and the reason I make it clear at the beginning of working with me is because a lot of people are made these promises before they come to work with me. A lot of people who work with me, it's not their first time of having business coaching. It's not the first time of working with a coach. It's not the first time that they're not brand new to business. They've been doing it for a little while. They've kissed the frogs. They've like, they've done that, and they've been drawn in by all the shiny stuff. And it's important for them to know that I'm not making them a false promise. Some of my clients, after working with me, over the years, there's been a few where we've agreed that actually running a business isn't the right thing for them, with whatever's going on in their life, whatever their preferences are, whether how open they can be to change, discomfort, challenge. Like, it's okay if they're not. But it's important to be honest about it, because a lot of people aren't, which is really sad. And especially if you look at like the ethics around anything to do with psychology and anything to do around coaching and mindset, that's vital. And actually, it's something I probably struggled to be really honest about at the beginning. And again, I mean, when you haven't got that consistency in your income, and you are worrying about the money and what's going to pay the bills, and you kind of take on the clients, even if you can see there's a massive red flag and they're like expecting you to do all this stuff, and you're like, yeah, it's fine. I can help them see they can do it themselves. They don't want to at that point. Like, they're not ready for the coaching. They're ready for something else. It's probably not working with me, and that's fine. But it goes back to the point you said around being able to ask for help. And I now notice, like, the people who, and the poll that you mentioned around, like, I've got it wrong or I don't know the answer. If people come to me and I can feel an energy where they feel they know everything already, they don't need me. It's okay. I know that no one has all the answers, right? So I'm not saying this from a judgmental space or point of view, but no one. I don't have all the answers. I make that really, I'm okay with not knowing stuff. But if people come to me with, and this comes back to ego, it comes back to maybe they feel like they know all the answers and they're so strong about it because it's an imposter, it's a confidence thing that's going on, and it's the opposite of what they're trying to portray, and all of that going on. But they have to be ready, and they have to be ready to ask for help, receive the help, make the change, and have to know that they don't know all the answers. Because if they think they know everything already, they don't need anyone else then. They don't need anyone else to help. And without being honest about that at the beginning, I'm going to end up working with people who I don't want to get out of bed for in the morning. I'd want a whole day of watching Netflix with the dog. I wouldn't, like it wouldn't energize me. And for me, that's really important for myself, for me as well. Like, I know the kind of people that I want to work with, that I get the most out of, that I get the most out of for them and for myself. And without being honest about that, it's not going to happen. It's going to look very different, which comes back to the self-leadership, understanding what I need as well. It's not just about everybody else. It's about what I need too.
There's always been some sort of conversation out there about loneliness in leadership, and the typical example that's given is the higher you go in the hierarchy, the more lonely you are. Small business owners sat at home working by themselves with no teams is not an uncommon scenario. So I'm just curious about your experience of loneliness in leadership in the corporate world and what you've learned about it since becoming a business owner.
In the corporate environment, I would 100%. The reason that I helped the directors that I worked alongside so much with their personal development in a coaching capacity that I didn't realize was really coaching at the time, it was just kind of me being me, just who I am as my personality, is exactly because of what you said. Is because the higher you climb, the lonelier it is. And I became their confidant. I became the one that knew everything about their business. I got to know them as a person, their life. Like, I remember going through a couple of redundancy rounds were happening within the team. And I obviously knew what was coming, and the director, and we were designing the structures and doing all the bits, you know, the bits behind the scenes. And when it came to delivering those conversations, which are hard to do, I remember this distinctly, like everybody who had been given a message, either positive or not, because it was a big change that was being made, was told that after their conversation, they could go home for the day, right? Or go to the pub or wherever they all chose to go and congregate. And me and the director were really the only people left in the business on that day, at that time. And the things that I then heard people say about the heartlessness of it, you know, or the lack of empathy and how cold it was and everything. And I know that the person that I'm talking about was not that way at all. Sometimes you have to put on some kind of persona to be able to deal with it yourself, which I understand. But what they didn't see was the difficulty that that person had in making the decisions through the consultation. When I was in the room and I saw it and I heard it, and I was like, it was hard, very hard, especially for the people they had close relationships to. And that's just one, you know, one example of the loneliness. And you also feel like you kind of like, especially if you're promoted into a leadership position and it's within a team that you've been part of, you kind of go from being part of one of the contributors to being one of the leaders, right? If that happens, which is very common, that is generally, you know, what happens. How do you then fit in? What's your identity around that? Like when people go for like drinks or dinners or lunches, like, are you there, or are you there and then you leave, or do you not go at all? Like, do you stay the whole time? And whereas before you wouldn't have even thought about that stuff because you were one of them, right? But now who are you? So it becomes an identity piece as well. And the higher you climb, the lonelier it is, true. But also I think part of that is like self-acceptance, self-awareness in the part that you play in that as well, because you can balance that out. And it's also about being realistic with your expectations. If that's what you want, if you want to be promoted into those leadership positions and you want to have more responsibility, and some of that comes with the job, some of that comes with the change, and it's about accepting that. And it's also why it's really important to have the balance elsewhere in your life. And that's what I'd say from the corporate world. And I think then in the and I actually, the bit that comes back, I think also, is then a bit about asking for help. When you take it then into how I see it with business owners, again, when you're feeling activated, vulnerable, stressed, which loneliness is going to make worse, it's going to exacerbate that. That's when it can be really difficult as well to then ask for help. That will then end up making you feel like you're more alone, because it's only you, it's all on you, it's in your head, especially if you've got neurodiversity like me, if you've got ADHD, the spirals and the thoughts, like, you know. And I think really the thing to combat the loneliness starts with self-awareness, like what, and not just about pointing fingers in like how other people are contributing to this, it's about how you're contributing to it as well. And not being afraid to ask for help, not being afraid to say that I don't know all the answers, not being afraid to say, do you know what, I'm going to try this and I might get it wrong. And there's also then the part around, if you do work at home on your own as, say, business owners, what else can you do? What do you need around that? What are your own needs? If we go to raising self-awareness, what are your own needs around that feeling of loneliness? And I mean, I've been there over the years. It moves in and out, the different, you know, things change. But I know that if I was to be, like, for example, for me, I love working at home. I'm an introvert and I love my own company. It's me and the dog, like, it's great. But if I was then to try to combat the feeling of feeling lonely and isolated sometimes into going to massive events or to networking with a load of strangers in person stuff, that's not good for my soul. For me, though, if there's like a bit of a more quality interaction that's smaller, that helps me to feel less alone, more involved. For some people, they would feel less alone in a big room of people. For me, that would make me feel more alone. I'd feel more isolated. So it's about knowing yourself and knowing your preferences, which takes doing the work. And also
Yeah.
takes putting yourself in situations that can feel very uncomfortable so that you can see, so you can try. And you're like, okay. So for example, I've never done an in-person networking thing. I mean, everyone was talking about some really great networking sessions that were happening. A lot of my clients were talking about it as well. So there was, one online that was being run. It was, I think, for like 150 people over a lunchtime, and it was free to join. I was like, hey, let me go and have a look. Oh my God, it was too much. Like, there was breakout rooms, and there was like, you had 2 minutes to talk about this, and then you came back in, and then more breakout rooms and all of this. And I was just like, oh, fuck, my brain's like, this is not going to be good for me. And luckily for me, I didn't do it in a place where I felt I needed it. I was doing it from a place of curiosity, just to kind of see what it was about. But then I knew it wasn't for me. And I
Yeah.
had to go and lie down after and nap for a bit because it was a lot.
I actually attended something really similar to that. And it was, yeah, the same thing, like chucking people in breakout rooms and talking to all these people that you didn't know. And it was like 2 minutes here and 2 minutes there. And it was only an hour. But at the end of it, I just like, when you come out of something and you just feel like I've got nothing useful out of that. It's
Other than the
literally,
fact that I'm knackered now.
yeah,
I'm just really tired.
where
That's
is my
hard.
bar of chocolate? Like,
Yeah, exactly. Now I'm going to reach for the galaxy.
it just felt like too organized. I'm yet to attend an online networking event that actually helps me gain that network and feel less lonely as a leader. And
Because
to
you don't
me,
get
it's really
time.
difficult. Yeah,
You don't get the time if it's and this is the thing about your preferences, what I'm hearing from you, and what I know about you anyway, is you do also crave that quality connection with people. It's about being able to get to know somebody on a deeper level. It's not just about the surface level stuff. You can't do that in 2 minutes.
no, you
It's
can't.
literally impossible. I mean, if
Mhm.
somebody can, they're probably a witch. I don't know, but like you like they're infiltrating your mind. But you can't build that. So it's about knowing your strengths. So some people would go to something like what we've just talked about. It didn't work for either of us, and feel great. Go do more of that. That's going to help you to feel more included and less alone, less isolated, right? For me, it had the opposite effect. For you, it had the opposite effect. You just thought, oh my God, what was that? Like, again, you come away thinking, did everyone, am I the only one? Am I the only one who's like feeling like that was hard?
Truthfully, my first thought was, thank God it was free. Like, because I couldn't have imagined how much how I would feel if I'd paid, say,
Yeah.
30 quid or 50 quid to go to that event and come out feeling like that. It just would have
Mm.
been so
Yeah.
internally slightly devastating, to
Yeah.
know that you've wasted your money on something that was absolutely never going to serve you. But yeah,
But
but
then
it's
I would challenge you on that. If you had paid for it, so there is someone out there that's done that, and they're saying exactly what you've just said, right? Oh my God, like I've just wasted my money. I get why you'd feel that way, but at the same time, what do you gain from that? What did you learn? You learned something. So you spent 30 quid, and now you know that you're never going to do that again. Okay,
yeah,
that's
possibly would have
great.
been a
You have
solid, more
information now, but
solid
before
lesson.
you were curious, before you didn't know, like now you know. That's
Mm,
great. That's great information to have. Self-awareness. It's actually raised your self-awareness.
silver linings.
Yeah, always.
Going back to what you said about like the corporate stuff and how you figure, like when you move up through the ranks and you have to start to figure out, like, how do I fit into the team, like what's my identity now. Hospitality teams are generally quite tight knit anyway.
Yeah.
You spend more time with these people than anyone else in your life, and
Mhm.
if you are in there long enough, a very large chunk of your friendship group will come out of that as well in the long term. So I kind of had the advantage that some of my friends were moving up with me.
Mm.
So there was still a crowd that I could drink in, if that makes
Yeah.
sense. Um, but the culture of hospitality a lot of the time is, you do this massive 12-hour shift and you work all the hours God sends, and then you disappear off out together and you're in the nightclub till 3 in the morning. That was how it was when I was in
Mm.
hospitality, and I went along with that for many years. But the higher I got, the more I had to think about, how do I manage that? Because obviously going out and drinking with your colleagues, especially when you're the leader or the manager, you have to be able to think about, okay, well, what if I do something silly? Or what if I get too drunk? Or what if I say something I shouldn't say? You know, you have to consider all these scenarios. I actually
What
found
if you
it.
use that as the opportunity to have that conversation with the person who works for you that you've been avoiding?
Yeah.
Because you've got some touch courage. Not a good thing.
No, but it was an advantage in some places. I have to say, there were a couple of people that definitely, you know, barriers were broken because of that point. The most interesting people I found in learning how to deal with that was actually, I call them my two first real leaders. And they completely took control of all drinking events. We would stay in the pub for a couple of pints afterwards. We might go to another pub if there was one that was open later or whatever. And once everything was shut, of course, this was back in the day when nothing was 24 hours, they would take us all back to their house. But when they were like, okay, these guys need sleep and they need to stop drinking because they're back in work in 3 hours, they would be the ones to say, right, go home. But because they took complete control of it, they were also able to dictate when they felt they'd had enough. So it might not always be us. Of course, the benefit of telling us to go was that we went to bed and actually showed up for work the next day. But they were also able to say, actually, I've had enough. I need these people to go so I can not make a fool of myself and I can get the sleep I need to show up for them. I was never in a position to be able to do that, neither personally comfortably or just physically being able to house all those people. But I did take a lot of lessons from that. I would always be, after that, the first one to sort of go. You know, I would set my own limit and say, right, that's me. I'm done. I'm going home. Don't stay out too late, guys. And it would just be that last minute reminder to them.
As you were saying that, around that kind of like part around being in control, for me, that actually would feel quite uncomfortable. Either if I was doing it or if somebody else was saying to me, it's time to go home now. And I'd be like, the rebel, like, especially, I don't drink anymore, but if it had been those days, I'd be like, don't tell me what to do. I'm going to stay out now just because you said that. I'm going to do the opposite. And the part that you can do around self-leadership around that is knowing when to leave for yourself. That's the important thing. And you can leave them people with like that parting message of, remember, you've got work in the morning, like, let's not stay out too late, or, you know, whatever. And I saw that modeled in a lot of some of the best leaders that I worked with in that. And I used to then do the same thing, but mostly because I'm a massive lightweight and would have made a fool of myself. And I know that because I just need someone to take me home because I wouldn't have been able to get myself anywhere. Like I was, you know, I'd sniff a drink and that'd be it. I'd be like very merry. But yeah, it would be like, well, we set it up. Maybe I've arranged it. Everybody's turned up and everything else. I'll stay for a couple of hours, if not an hour. And then I just say, have a nice time. And you know what? I've also taken this into what I do with my business. I mean, you've been to a couple of my in-person events and retreats and stuff. And at the beginning, I used to feel like I had to be there with everybody all of the time. But actually, I know that some of the best processing, space in between conversations, all of that stuff can happen when I step away from it for a minute as well. So you can facilitate and open that up for people to have, and then it's okay. Right.
I think it was actually formal feedback I gave you at some point, wasn't it? That I'd said that the fact that you're confident enough and assured enough in your own head to be able to say in the middle of those things, I'm going to go to my room for a couple of hours and just walk away. That to me, and I know to some other people that have been to these in-person events, was a real boost for us to be able to say, okay, I'm going to my room for a couple of hours. You know, it was empowering. I'm checking all this out in a future episode, but it's one of the massive misconceptions, isn't it, of introverts, that they don't want to be around people ever. And it's just not true. We do need some social contact, but it's just a question of how. And I think that message you're sending of like, find out what works for you, especially when you're a business owner, especially when you work at home on your own, especially when you have no team and the only people you actually speak to are your clients. You can't talk to your clients about your business. It's about finding things that work for you in ways that work for you, and actually setting limits on things that work for you and saying, that's how much I need. You know?
And it takes time to be able to do that. And it starts with self-awareness. Definitely. And I think one of the things that I'd say as well, in terms of the introversion side for me, what I found really difficult when I started my business and reflecting back on when I was in corporate, the whole thing around the extroversion bias and how the world is set up for extroverts. So I didn't have much behavior modeled to me about how to meet my needs, which meant that I was masking consistently with the ADHD in mind as well, but also with, kind of pretending to be an ambivert, which I'm not. I'm an introvert. But there wasn't enough awareness around it. There wasn't enough education around it. And around what I could see in terms of success and other people was the people who did stay out late and go to the networking stuff, or were the ones going to all of the meetings, all of the socials, having, doing all this extracurricular stuff. Again, if I go back to school, I was not interested in extracurricular activity. I did not care. I'd had enough of people by the end of I didn't need any more people at the end of the day. I didn't know that at the time about myself, though. So as well, for me, in the way that I do that at events, for example, when I'll say, like, I'm just going to step away for a couple of hours, I'll be back. We'll come back at 6 and see them before dinner or wherever it is also important for me to model to other people who need that. And I'm not saying that it's because everybody who comes is exactly the same as me. They're not. But it's also why in my marketing, I'll talk a lot about the space that I take and that I create in my day. Because I never had any of that modeled to me. So now that I do that for myself and I've explored that for myself, if I can help like one person from the things that I share to see that, oh, do you know what? That actually sounds like what I need. Or I want to do that. Maybe they don't know how yet, or maybe they're just curious and they're not even sure if it's them. But if I can help to make that perspective shift for people in that, actually, do you know what? That is actually draining me and I didn't even realize. Then I've won, right? That is success to me.
What do you think leaders everywhere can learn from small business owners like you and me?
The things that are coming up for me is around making yourself uncomfortable, learning about your strengths and your development areas, but not necessarily meaning that then your development areas are things that or your strengths versus weaknesses, and reframing that to development space. So like that classic question, like, what's your biggest weakness? I usually say, oh, I care too much about people. That is a weakness, in that, as I can also go into obliger tendencies, that can mean I don't put myself first. And the other thing that I'd say is probably around prioritization, like what's actually important, because you realize even more when you run your own business, like how limited your capacity is. So you have to make better decisions with where you're spending your time, what you're giving your energy to, so that you can also not just run your business, but also have balance in the rest of your life, with your health, with your relationships, with others, and with yourself.
I can 100% vouch for the incredible support and dedication you have for your clients. So for all the small business owners out there who want to find out more about how you can support them, where can they find you?
Oh, thank you, Laura. It's best places to find me is over on LinkedIn, Nicole Louise Winer. I believe there's only one of me. And otherwise, look on my website, NicoleLouiseOnline.com.
If you want to go and check out Nicole, I couldn't recommend her more. She absolutely kicks ass with kindness. Her honesty and personalised approach and genuine care and love for every person she works with is, in my experience, unmatched, and she's helped so many people achieve the business and balance they've been dreaming of. Thank you so much for coming on today, Nicole. I hope you've enjoyed your guest experience.
I have. Thank you so much for having me.
It's been an insightful and an empowering conversation. Thank you so much for sharing. Until next time, everyone.